Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So this is our class for editorial-based reading comprehensions. Savitri ma'am has been taking this class, but today I'll be taking this class. So let's get started with the class. We have those of you who have joined today. We have uh, an editorial from The Guardian. The Guardian has been a source for CAT questions for quite a bit of time. Those of you who read The Guardian editorials regularly would benefit from that practice, because CAT uses these editorials frequently to create passages, to create para-summary questions. In fact, they're also used for parajumble order, etc. So it's a very prominent source. All right. So the word length is around 445 words, which is what we expect it to be. By the way, those of you who can't hear me or have any other issues, do let me know. Just a moment. And I'm also checking the chat in case anyone has anything to suggest. Can anyone post something in the chat? Maybe ask a doubt, so I know that it's functioning and you can actually ask me doubts. All right. So to resume our conversation, so we have around 450 words. This is the traditional length, we can say, from 2020 onwards. Earlier passages used to be longer, etc. Okay, now, however, before we start with the reading of the RC, I want to discuss something conceptual about the reading process, because we should know exactly how the reading process is supposed to be for the exam. It's slightly different. If you notice how ma'am teaches you or how I may teach you, there'll be a difference, right? And how all of you all read also, there is a difference, because we all have built an intuitive way of reading. Reading is taught, but the process entirely happens in our head, and a lot of it is intuitive. A lot of connections we make are intuitive. But the exam expects us to have one outcome, meaning all of us, if we read a passage, let's say this is the passage, if we read a passage, all of us should feel at the end of the passage that there is something that we all agree about the passage, right? So if we are supposed to agree about the passage, that means we all should have the ability to read in a certain specific way, right? Try not to use our intuitive reading process as much, but read for the exam. So how am I supposed to read for the exam? I'll discuss that briefly, and then we'll read the RC, after which we'll solve 4 questions from the RC, which is what CAT has been doing, right? We get around a 450 word RC followed by 4 application based questions. So that is exactly what we'll be doing. So, all right. Thank you, Shiva, for interacting. Others also, please type in your answers and your doubts whenever you have any doubts. So remember what I'm trying to suggest here and why this sentence is important. Okay. So let's say we see the RC like in the exam like this. Like, look at the RC here. It looks all neat to us. It looks perfectly ordered. So this is our first interaction when we look at the RC. But of course, when we read it, it becomes all khichdi, right? If we just do one reading of it, it becomes this thing. Now, often what happens is we start trying to answer questions at this stage, either because we are falling short of time, or maybe because we don't exactly know what the conversation going on in the passage is about, right? So these will factor into our understanding of the passage, and this will factor into time, and we often rush to the questions because of that. So what I want to suggest is, read until you reach this stage 3. Stage 3 is basically, I should be able to figure this out about the passage. I should be able to say about topic A, whatever is the topic in the passage, the author says B, right? I want a specific part of the passage very clear in my head, right? These could be multiple different words. It doesn't have to be these neat little boxes, but it could be multiple little words. But I want a specific thing about the passage clear in my head, which is there is a certain topic the author is discussing, and about that topic, the author is saying something specific, right? Once I have, so remember in the exam also to follow this reading process, right? Reading skills needed for the exam: simplify any topic without having prior context. If you notice this, you don't have any prior context. You don't know what this passage is about, correct? Evaluate and analyze information, right? We don't have any title, subtitle, so we have to create context. This is a great tool for you to create a fixed context in your head. Okay, so remember that this stage, going from stage 1 of reading to stage 3 of reading, is a conscious process that all of y'all will have to follow. With what I spoke at the start about not using our intuitive reading process as much, but reading for the exam. That means any topic in the exam, any topic in the exam, I can reduce it to something specific, right? Something specific like about topic A, author says B, right? So make sure that you have this checklist in your mind, that I've gone from first seeing the passage like this, then thinking of it in a vague sort of general understanding of the passage, and then moving to something very specific, right? So reach this stage, check this stage, that yes, I have reached a stage where I know clearly what the author is trying to say about the topic. And mind you, this does not mean that you understand 100% of the topic. Not at all. In fact, this means that you understood some parts of the topic very clearly, right? I'm not looking for 100% understanding of the topic. I'm not looking for 100% retention of the topic, right? All of these attempts of understanding the topic 100%, retaining the topic as much as possible, all of these are going to cause us to use more time. And all of these are actually going to get in the way of us simplifying and evaluating. Correct? So, very briefly, to repeat what I was trying to say, look at the passage once, go through it in stages, however you read, but your objective, all our objective, should be that we reach this final stage, which is about a certain topic, the author says something specific, right? So, today, when we see a passage, right, today, when we see today's passage, I want all of y'all to first reduce it to this. Okay, think about what the topic of the passage is, right? And think about what specifically about the topic the author is trying to say. This doesn't have to be a perfect process, right? This can have imperfections. But what I'm looking for is clarity using words of the author, right? So I'm not going to use my description to fill blank A. I'm not going to use my description to fill blank B. I'm going to use the author's words to fill blank A and blank B. Am I clear? Shiva, Aranya, am I clear? What is expected with this? All right. So I'll show all of you all the passage. Take your time and read it, right? And then I'll break the passage down, and then we'll take a look at the questions, right? I want us to realize that there is a specific reading process, right? With one objective. Objective is clarity. We need to figure out about any topic this. What is the topic and what about the topic the author is saying? Once we have checked this box, all of y'all will realize that all those application based questions which we fear, right? Application based questions such as inference, assumption, right? Author's opinion, all of those questions will become very easy, right? So this is my hypothesis. So I want to show you the passage now, and I want you to read it in a way, in stages, of course. This doesn't happen in one simple reading from start to end of the passage. Reread parts wherever you want to. Reread certain parts many times. Don't read certain parts many times, right? Figure out how to selectively give your attention across the passage, right? This doesn't happen in your first reading, mind you. This will probably happen in your second reading. So selectively pay more attention to certain information, overlook other information, but figure out this about the passage, right? So let's do this first exercise, and then we'll actually get to the questions. All right. Should we read the questions first before reading the passage, or first read the passage? By the way, if everyone can see Shivansh's doubt, should we first read the questions before reading the passage, or first read the passage? Do you want to try to remember 4 questions and then proceed to read the passage? Do you know what all you're asking your mind to do? You're asking your mind to remember 4 questions vaguely, then try to remember the passage vaguely, and then try and understand the questions. Don't burden yourself by reading the questions first. This is my opinion. I know conflicts with a lot of things that other teachers might say, but I think onboarding a lot of information in your head, like I said, if you're trying to remember the passage, it's a useless exercise. If you're trying to retain information, if you're trying to remember a question, it's a useless exercise. The reason why it's a useless exercise is think of the passage like a bar graph, right? You don't try and remember the bar graph. You see what the x and y axis tell you, and then you go to the questions and try and answer the questions. There's no point remembering this piece of information. So don't try and remember the passage. Don't try and your mind will naturally keep some part of the passage like this in your mind. This will naturally happen. So don't go out of your way to remember the passage. Don't try and read questions first. It just onboards a lot of information in your mind, which you try to search in the passage, which messes with the reading process. All right. So I just want to show you the passage and we'll get started. We are trying to figure this out about the passage, right? Let's see. All right. So I'm just waiting here. I'm waiting for around 2.5 minutes, right? Please figure out about topic A, author says B. Let's get started. All right. So I think I've given you enough time. I know some of you are still probably reading. Now I just want to get to an idea, right? Here I want to discuss this idea. We'll get to the passage shortly. I know some of you are still reading. Remember that to simplify any topic, you'd have to oversimplify words. Okay? I want you to think in terms of how this takes place in our mind in our mother tongue, right? So my mother tongue is Marathi. If a person is speaking in Marathi to me and they use difficult words, right? Let's say metaphysical fancy, theologians, conceptual scaffolding, suppose, right? They use difficult words, unknown words, cybernetics. I don't know what it means, right? I know sort of what it means, but I don't exactly know what it means. So if difficult words are used in my mother tongue to me while someone is talking to me, what I do is I estimate the meaning, right? I can, if a person is speaking to me and they use very difficult words in Marathi, I can still estimate the overall meaning and come up with this, right? So that's the process that you will consciously have to learn to apply at speed in the exam, right? I want to describe this quickly. I want to read the passage for you quickly, and then we'll move on to the questions. We'll figure out about topic A, author says B, we'll figure it out. But I want to read in a fashion where you realize how I'm oversimplifying things, right? Remember, to oversimplify things, we are focusing on why the author is taking up our time rather than what the author is saying, right? This is just factually overloading ourselves. We don't necessarily need facts. Like I said, I'm treating the question like a bar graph. I don't need to remember the facts. What I need to remember is, why is the author taking up my time, correct? So we'll figure that out. We'll learn to simplify any sentence, right? Remember, the longer the sentence is, the more difficult the words are, the more difficult it is for us to simplify. So if you notice a long sentence, if you notice difficult words, that means you have to increase your efforts to figure out what that sentence is. You can't read this sentence, we'll call this sentence X, which has longer, the sentence is longer, more difficult words, the same as sentence Y, which is like a short sentence with easier words, right? These take different amount of effort. What we try to do while reading is, we try to read in a linear way, and we try and apportion the same amount of effort for each sentence. That actually creates problems. So we have to reread, or we have to go back to certain aspects of the sentences and simplify them. This is a process that you have to consciously follow as you're reading throughout the exam, and you have to practice this every day, right? We'll figure it out in the passage first. Just give me one moment. All right. So Stephen Hawking may have insisted that philosophy is dead in his latest book, but the numbers queuing up for some festival currently going on somewhere suggest that this statement isn't based on observable evidence. So I know the author thinks philosophy isn't dead, right? Indeed, what is billed as the world's largest philosophy festival is as much frequented by physicists, scientists, philosophers. All right. So we know that everyone attends those festivals. All these three groups attend the festivals. And while there are some, like embryologist Louis Walpert, who maintain that philosophy is a non-subject from which science has nothing to learn, the very existence of popularity of this conference, now it's 4 years, suggests new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. So, you know what I mean by why the author is taking up my time? The author is using these two fellows, Hawking and Walpert, to suggest that philosophy is either dead or philosophy is a non-subject, right? Then the author corrects this idea by saying there is a festival, right? In this festival, many people, physicists, scientists, and philosophers are gathering, and this suggests that people are interested in an interdisciplinary conversation. This suggests philosophy is not dead. This suggests philosophy is actually probably a subject, right? So I'm simply focused on why the author is taking up my time. Let's look at the second paragraph. But Hawking may be right to the extent that science has largely supplanted philosophy as the vehicle for our big questions about life, the universe, everything, especially in the popular imagination. So in the second paragraph, the author is somewhat agreeing with Hawking. The author is saying philosophy has been replaced by science for certain big questions. Correct? Now, to elaborate on this, the author says throughout the 20th century, Anglo-Saxon analytic philosophers focused attention on increasingly narrow set of conceptual problems that had all the imaginative range of a car manual. So, all I'm interested in is, in the 20th century, philosophy in the UK, the Brits, Anglo-Saxon is basically white philosophers. Their attention was down to an increasingly narrow set of conceptual problems. So they are focused on a narrow set. Those who defended this way of working insisted on modest and careful restraint in the flights of metaphysical fancy that can leave some philosophers looking a bit like theologians, which in some quarters remains the ultimate insult. Right? Let me for a moment, just one moment, please. All right. So let me for a moment tell you how to simplify this sentence. Sorry, the next sentence. Yes, this sentence. Right? I'm specifically using this sentence as an example. right? Like I told you, in my mother tongue, I would be able to simplify this. We can do this in any other language, right? I can use words from Hindi in my mind to simplify the sentence, right, if needed. So let's say those who defended this way of working, some philosophers defended the idea that philosophy should focus on narrow set of concepts, right? They said that you shouldn't have flights of fancy. Basically, you shouldn't be thinking in a very fancy way. You should restrict your knowledge and your attention to some specific area. This could leave, if you don't focus on a specific narrow area, this could leave us like theologians. Now, suppose I don't know theologians. So all I know is being a theologian, according to an Anglo-Saxon analytic philosopher of the 20th century, is a bad idea, right? Remains the ultimate insult. So from this sentence, I gather that philosophers should not, according to this group, philosophers should not have fanciful thoughts, right? They should focus on a narrow set of conceptual problems. So see what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm simplifying any topic. I'm trying to evaluate that topic. Correct? I'm estimating its meaning rather than looking for a literal meaning of every word. This is not going to be possible in the exam, right? They're going to throw new terms at it. I just realized while reading the passage, I don't exactly know what this means. Correct? And this is going to happen in the exam as well to all of us, right? We can have, maybe my vocabulary has 6,000 words. Some students might have 7,000 words, 8,000 words, but the exam is going to throw up new words at us, right? Okay, let's read the third paragraph. So far we are told philosophy isn't dead by the author, right? There is enthusiasm for interdisciplinary conversation. According to the 20th century, philosophy was supposed to be narrow, right? And we are given an example. Locke also described himself as an under-laborer to Newton. Basically, Locke is also trying to prepare ground for other sciences, but working on a narrow set of ideals, correct? The new mood in British philosophy, however, at least in its popular guise, is that the time has come for a more expansive role. Indeed, even the word metaphysics is making a comeback. So suppose I don't understand metaphysics, right? I don't know what metaphysics is. And by the way, I'm going to try and answer all the questions that we have created with the assumption that all the students don't know what these words mean, right? Because in the exam, we are going to we are going to face words which we don't know. So we all need the ability to overcome these words. All right. So I can simplify this to, there is a change from narrow conceptual problems, which is what these 20th century philosophers thought they should focus on. The new mood is for a more expansive role. So I don't know what metaphysics means, but there is a wider role for philosophy today, right? And this is partly down to the questions that physics and technological advances are throwing up. So if I was to ask you an inference-based question, why is today's philosophy changing, right? Why is the purpose, let's say, why is the purpose of today's philosophy changing? So the reason for today's philosophy, or the purpose or approach of today's philosophy changing, is actually physics and technological advances. This is making people and philosophers in general look for a more wider role for philosophy, right? And we are told why. These are, by the way, remember this in your entire VARC section. The moment the author throws up an example can be a direct example, or it could be an illustration of some sort, right? Pay attention to it as, okay, I'm being given an example, I'm being given an illustration, because before and after the example and illustration, the author is saying something important. So before the example or after the example, the author will say something important. So here, this is an illustration. These questions are illustrations, right? To what extent does virtual reality challenge what we mean by reality? Do advances in medical science and cybernetics suggest that humanity can overcome the limitations that have hitherto been associated with what it is to be human? So, even though I don't know what cybernetics means, because I can spot this as an illustration, I know why it's given. It's given to show me that a specific kind of technological advance, right? Here VR, right? And here cybernetics, a specific kind of technological advance, has actually created a condition where philosophy is being given a more expansive role, right? Therefore, philosophy, because of these advances, philosophy has a more expansive role. So, see what I mean? If I pay attention to an example, before the example or after the example, I discover what is important to the author. The author is saying philosophy has shifted to a more expansive role. Okay. Now, even Hawking himself has stimulated considerable reflection on the idea that science can tackle the question of why it is that we and the universe exist, going on famously to insist that if we find the answer to that, it would be ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God. Again, the author is giving us an illustration to suggest that even Hawking himself is reflecting on the idea that science can tackle wider questions, right? Knowing the mind of God is almost overlapping with the concept of philosophy. It's actually overlapping much more, right? Philosophy actually discusses this concept quite a bit, right? Based on those who knew the meaning of the word theologians. It's not important. All right. Let's see the last paragraph. The suggestion that science needs nothing from philosophy is both intellectually arrogant and critically naive. So, from this sentence, I know science needs something, something from philosophy. Correct? So, philosophy is not dead. Science needs something from philosophy. But given the evidence of this week's discussions at Hay, the idea that science does not need to interrogate its own conceptual scaffolding. So, this is basically, this sentence is trying to explain what we saw here, right? We saw here that science needs some philosophy, right? That is what this sentence is trying to say. So, even if I didn't know what conceptual scaffolding could mean, right, I know why the sentence is given. The sentence is given to show me that even at Hay, many people opposed to minority would be majority. Many people believe that philosophy can actually help science, in short, right? Indeed, those scientists who speak of God with such alacrity, right? Suppose I don't know alacrity, but I know here Hawking has spoken of God. Hawking has spoken of God. So those scientists who speak of God with such alacrity might even learn a thing or two from theologians. So scientists might learn something from philosopher or theologian. All right. So is the passage clear to everyone? From what I described, is the passage clear to everyone? Please tell me in the chat. All right. Okay. Great. So, right. Now let's go and try and answer this question that I'd thrown at you in the beginning. About topic A, author says B. I want to use words from the passage. And remember, this is not a perfect process, but this is a process that allows us clarity, right? Now, I'm sure all of you all have selected some words, right? You can type out those words also if you want. I'll just wait for around 30 seconds. Type out for blank A, you've chosen certain words. For blank B, you've chosen certain words. Let me show you the passage for this. I'm waiting for around 30 seconds. All right. So tell me what could go in blank A. Tell me what could go in blank B. Blank A should cover the topic. Blank B should cover what about the topic. All right. Please type in your answers. Ravi Teja, I don't understand. Why are we referring to phylogenetic? Aranya, alacrity would mean speed or rather briskness, right? Readily. Use it as readily. Readily would be a good replacement for it. Okay. So let me now show you what I think A and B can be replaced by. So let's say about topic philosophy versus science. There is a new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. This phrase, if you notice, I'm taking directly from this location. new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. Now, see why this phrase, even though it's largely like I told you here, I'm looking to achieve this third stage of reading, which is an oversimplification, right? Oversimplification of about topic A, author says B. Now, why do I say that this phrase is good enough to replace the rest half of the passage? Correct? You don't have to necessarily focus on this phrase. Some of you might have chosen some other phrase. But if you notice the last paragraph, right? Last paragraph is telling us what? That philosophy or science needs philosophy, let's say. And we'll say scientists can learn a thing or two from philosophers, right? So this means there is a new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation, interdisciplinary between which disciplines? Science and philosophy, right? So about the topic science versus philosophy or philosophy versus science, there is a new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. Is the process of reading, as I have discussed it right now, is this process clear to all of you all? Shiva, Raviteja, Aranya, others, Shivansh, Mahim, is the process right? Let's get started with the questions. So I'm going to show all of you all the questions, and please go through the questions and type in your answers, right? So let's get started with the first question. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except. Okay, I'll just wait for some time. Please type in your answers. All right, please type in your answers. What do you think is the answer for this question? Others also, we all are contributing here. No one has to be like, worried about your answer being wrong. We're trying to figure things out. So please, bindas, type in your answers. Right. So what does, by the way, an inference mean? Right. I just want all of you to quickly note down this example. Right. So let's say A is dark clouds in the sky and water in the streets, right? Suppose you step outside your house right now, you see dark clouds in the sky and you see water in the streets. From this, you'll infer that it has rained, correct? So this is an inference. I want you to remember this example because we intuitively use this every day in our life. But what does an inference mean? It means I'm using one or more facts to come up with a new fact. Correct? This is what a very basic definition of inference means. This, we can infer something from one or two facts. In this case, we need both facts to infer rain. We need both dark clouds and water in the streets to infer rain. Okay. So to go back to the option, let's read the first option. The festival demonstrates a growing interest in philosophy among both scientists and philosophers. Correct? So among both scientists and philosophers, there is growing interest. So this is right. We are told the philosophy festival has multiple people attending. Physicists are attending, scientists are attending, philosophers are attending. So this is a valid inference. I'm looking for an invalid inference. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except. So I'm looking for an invalid inference. This is a valid inference. This is not my answer, right? Let's look at option D now. D is easy. Advances in medical science and cybernetics challenge traditional notions of human limitation. So here, what it is to be human. So advances in medical science and cybernetics are challenging this. Again, D is a valid inference. It's not my answer. So A and D are not my answers. I've located this information. By the way, how am I able to locate this information quickly? And remember, the reason for our accuracy always depends on, like the bar graph question. When I read a question, I go to the graph and answer it. Please follow the same process. Don't answer from memory. If you answer from memory, you'll go wrong. Okay. Now let's see. A and D are not our answer. C. Stephen Hawking believes that science can address some of the fundamental questions traditionally tackled by philosophy. So let's look here. Even Hawking himself has stimulated considerable reflection on the idea that science can tackle the question of why it is that we and the universe exist. Right? It would be like figuring out the mind of God. So Hawking believes that science can address some of the fundamental questions traditionally tackled by philosophy. Now I'll tell you one thing. Questions tackled by philosophy is not directly inferred here. We don't know if God is a question directly tackled by philosophy, right? But how do I know that C is a valid assumption and how do I valid inference? I'm sorry, C is a valid inference and it's not my answer. I know this because, like I told you here, right? Dark clouds, water in the sky, it has rained. I need both these facts to figure out it has rained, but rain is not directly stated in dark clouds. Rain is not directly stated in water in the streets. It's something new that we have inferred. Correct? We have concluded something new. So, the same way, based on science can tackle these questions, I know that Stephen Hawking believes that science can address fundamental questions of philosophy. Science, philosophy is dead, is what Hawking is saying, right? Hawking is saying, right? So, A, C, and D are not my answers. Can someone tell me which word in option B makes it correct? Which word in option B makes it an invalid inference and therefore the correct answer? The word is consistently embraced expansive medical metaphysical inquiries, right? If you notice, the passage told us that the the philosophical approach shifted. Earlier approach was, let me find it here. Earlier approach was, they called it a narrow approach, right? A narrow set of conceptual problems, right? From this approach, it shifted to a more expansive role. So consistently embraced is the word which makes option B an invalid inference, and therefore option B is our answer. All right. So B is the correct choice. I want to quickly move on to the next question. And if we have time left, I'll go through the doubts, right? Let's try and answer. I think I've answered it exhaustively. I've told you why A, C, and D can be validly inferred, right? And why B is invalid. B is invalid specifically because of the words consistently embraced expansive metaphysical inquiries. All right. Let's look at the next question. What valid assumption can be made about the majority position at the Hay with regards to the role of philosophy? Again, I'm going to wait for a little while. I'll wait for around 30 seconds. Please go through it and type in your answers. All right. I think students are finding this question easier than the previous question, rightly so. So let's go through this. All right. What valid assumption can be made about the majority position at the Hay with regards to the role of philosophy? Let's look at A. Philosophy, due to its limitations, still largely remains within the confines of traditional metaphysical inquiries. So let's say philosophy, due to its limitations, still largely remains within the confines. We know philosophy has changed. The new mood in philosophy is a more expansive role. So, still largely remains within confines is incorrect. Notice that for my decisions of declaring an option incorrect, I'm always using specific words. Here, I told you the words consistently embraced is incorrect, and therefore it's our right answer. In this case, we are looking at still largely remains within the confines is incorrect, right? Let's look at option B. Philosophy has become more and more useful today due to modern scientific progress alone. This is the only reason which makes philosophy more useful today. So the word alone, which is placed at the end strategically, makes option B incorrect, right? Option D is incorrect because philosophy is mainly useful as a historical reference, right? But here we are told philosophy is actually useful today. Philosophy can help science. Science needs philosophy. So mainly useful as historical reference, invalid. So the correct assumption is philosophy plays a crucial role in interrogating the conceptual and ethical implications of scientific work. This is a valid assumption directly based on the last paragraph, right? Sciences, we need to interrogate science's moral and ethical implications, right? And how do we interrogate this? We use philosophy, right? So philosophy plays a crucial role in interrogating conceptual and ethical implications of scientific work. This based on the last paragraph of the passage. All right, let me just go through your comments once. Yes, so I think this is a much easier question for students. Let's try and figure out the next question, everyone. Remember, I'm using specific words for my decisions. I want you to do the same. Go back to the passage and look for whether such words are acceptable or not. Right? Let's see the next question. Which of the following, if true, could lead Wolpert to change his opinion on the relevance of philosophy to science? This is about this person's opinion. All right. First, read his opinion, then go to the options. Let's get started. Yeah, we just have two more questions to go through. So, all right, I can see that this question is trickier for students. Correct? Let me first simplify the question for you. Right? Yeah, these words, if true, these words mean that options won't be presented in the passage. These options are new options. I need to consider these options as true and then see if they would change Wolpert's opinion. Correct? Now, first is what is Wolpert's opinion? Wolpert thinks that philosophy is a non subject. Science has nothing to learn from philosophy. Correct? So, we want to now change this to science needs philosophy. We want to change this opinion from this to this. Correct? What will help Wolpert change that opinion? So let's look at A. Interdisciplinary collaborations between philosophers and science result in more comprehensive and impactful solutions to complex global problems. So here We are talking about collaborating for complex global problem, right? But the passage is talking about science needs philosophy. Wolpert is talking about science does not need philosophy. This is not telling me whether science needs or does not need philosophy, because this is talking about scientists and philosophers working together for complex global problems. So I can say I'm setting up a company which is going to have AI based driving or automated driving. So that company will require philosophers to decide what decision to take, and it will also need scientists, right? So they're working collaboratively, but one is not helping the other. So option A is invalid. Option A is not going to change Wolpert's opinion because they're simply collaborating for some other work. B says major scientific breakthroughs are shown to have been directly influenced by philosophical debates on ethics and metaphysics. Right? Major scientific breakthroughs are shown to have been directly influenced by philosophical debates on ethics and metaphysics. So we'll put B aside. Let's look at C. Renowned scientists publicly acknowledge the critical role of philosophy in framing and guiding their research. So this is talking about renowned scientists publicly acknowledge critical role of philosophy, right? This is not going to change Wolpert's opinion. Wolpert needs to see that science is being helped by philosophy, right? And simply some renowned scientists publicly acknowledging the critical role of philosophy is not good enough, right? Now let's look at D. Empirical studies demonstrate that philosophical inquiry leads to significant advancements in scientific theories and practices. So in option D, we are told that philosophical inquiry leads to significant advancements in scientific theories and practices, right? We wanted to change Wolpert's opinion from science has nothing to learn from philosophy to science needs philosophy. Look at option D. Option D is saying philosophical inquiry has led to significant advancements in scientific theories and practices. So D, if D were true, it would lead Wolpert to change his opinion. I know this question is difficult. I know this question will require all of you all to maybe later pause the video and solve it carefully. But please look at it like we want to change the opinion from science has nothing to learn from philosophy to science needs philosophy. We need to change Wolpert's opinion. Correct? And only option D tells us that philosophical inquiry leads to significant advancements. Option B says major scientific breakthroughs are shown to have been directly influenced by philosophical debates on ethics and metaphysics. So they are directly influenced, right? Influenced by philosophy. But that does not mean it's needed, right? We could have other things that influence science. Science is influenced by XYZ factors, by multiple variables. That does not mean science needs those variables. But in option D, science needs philosophical inquiry to make advancements, right? So we are changing the opinion from science has nothing to learn to science needs philosophy in option D. All right. Let me see if any one of you has gotten this correct. All right. This is a very difficult question. I simply admire those of you who tried to solve it with patience. But this is a question type that will be asked in the exam. This is a passage type that will be asked in the exam. It has been frequently asked. Philosophy is a topic that students fear and hate. That's because it's asked frequently in the exams. Let's try and solve another question here. Which of the following best encapsulates the main idea of the passage? This is the last question, everyone. So hang in there. I know it's a difficult passage. Hang in there. Please go through this and try and solve this question. I'll wait again. I think this question will be much easier for all of you all. So I'm just waiting a little. Please go through it carefully. All right. Others, type in your answers, please. Don't worry, I'll bring the class to an end. I know it's taxing to solve difficult passages. I believe all of you all can answer this question accurately. Shiva, there is a specific word in option D which makes it incorrect. Please look for that word. I'm just waiting for another 10 seconds and then we'll move on to look at the answer. All right, let's see the answers. Answer, rather. Oh, okay. I have to show you. There's no slide marking. So the right answer is option A here. Right? The Hay Festival reveals a resurgence in interest of philosophy. Why is there a resurgence in interest of philosophy? Because philosophy has now a more expansive role, right? Suggesting it remains relevant in interdisciplinary dialogues alongside science. So, science needs philosophy. There is new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. Notice how the main idea of the passage is simply a restatement of this, right? About the topic philosophy versus science, there is new enthusiasm for an interdisciplinary conversation. Correct? The main idea of the passage is simply this, which has been rephrased, right, in the last question. So, which word in option B makes it incorrect? Stephen Hawking's dismissal of philosophy, this is correct. Dismiss to kiya hai usne. Indicates that science has completely replaced philosophical inquiry. This is incorrect. Completely replaced philosophical inquiry is incorrect. This is not stated, right? And this is not the this is not the main idea of the passage. This isn't the main idea of the passage. Let's look at option C. Philosophy has consistently been limited to narrow conceptual issues with no significant impact on scientific advancements. Consistently limited to narrow conceptual outlooks. We know that philosophy has a new mood, right? So a consistently been limited incorrect here. There is a new mood in philosophy. There, philosophy has a more expansive role. So consistently makes option C incorrect, and it's not the main idea of the passage as well. In option D, the British philosophical traditions focus on metaphysical inquiries, correct, has led to a decrease in interest in contemporary philosophical debates. यहाँ पे तो increase हो रहा है, right? Is attended by physicists, scientists, philosophers, right? World's largest philosophy festival. So decrease would be incorrect factually, right? So only option A covers the main point of the author. All right. So, okay. Now, I just want to cover this point again and we'll bring the class to an end, right? The point is read in a way where you reduce the passage to something very specific, right? You reduce the passage to this idea, right? Once you've achieved this, then you proceed to the questions. This will allow you to navigate through the questions. Like I was navigating, I knew that philosophy is now changed, right? I knew philosophy is now being used for an interdisciplinary conversation with science, right? This allowed me to navigate through questions like this: consistently embraced expansive metaphysical inquiries. A consistently is incorrect again, right? So these will help me make decisions. My clarity in figuring out the passage will help me make clear decisions when I'm looking at options. All right. Keep this idea in mind in your reading process. So with this, I want to bring the class to an end. I just want to highlight that we are going to hold these classes soon. How you can fill your forms for the ZAT exam will be discussed in the coming week. And we also have a DILR intro class for strategy, right? And you can go through this class. This will be live on 24th July at 8:30 p.m. All right. So I hope the class has been helpful to all of you all. I hope it was in some way useful. It added to your reading process, and in some way, it will help you improve in the days to come. Right? We'll be holding these classes consistently, so do tune in. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope it has been useful. Thank you, Aranya. Thank you, Shiva, Moksha. Those of you, all of you all who interacted, please keep logging in for more such classes. Thank you.